Republican Senator Rob Portman of Ohio. He sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's traveled to the region numerous times just in the last few months. Senator, you and I have had lots of conversations about Ukraine. Welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks, Chuck.
Let me start with the president's remarks yesterday, an apparent ad lib. But it's a question I think I asked you on this. You know, can this end with Putin in power? And what did you make of the president's remarks?
Well, first, I think all of us believe the world would be a better place without Vladimir Putin. But second, that's not the official U.S. policy. And by saying that regime change is our strategy, effectively, it plays into the hands of the Russian propagandists and plays into the hands of Vladimir Putin. So it was a mistake, and the president recognized that, and the White House has walked it back. By the way, they had to walk back 3 other comments he made as well. But look, we're in a crisis. We're in a war situation, and so clarity is incredibly important, and we need to be sure that we are also clear with our NATO allies, because that's how we are stronger.
President Zelensky heard all of this week, and he just says for him it's still talk. And I understand that he's in the middle of this war. He's watching innocent people get attacked and die. He wants some planes. He wants this this ability to do a no-fly zone. Any movement in your head on this?
Well, I think President Zelensky is correct. I thought the president's speech was very strong, despite the ad lib at the end, the gaffe at the end. But it was a powerful speech that does not match the action. So there was a mismatch between the rhetoric and what we're actually doing. And that's the issue, and that's what President Zelensky was talking about. Because there are additional weapons that they're desperately needing that we are not yet providing, particularly any anti-air systems and more munitions for their own anti-air systems. But also they're asking for anti-tank systems. They're asking for more anti-ship systems, which is really important right now because some of these missiles are coming from the Black Sea. They've asked for help across the board that is not yet there, and that's what President Zelensky is talking about. So we need to do more. We need to do it more quickly. We did send some Soviet-era anti-aircraft systems, I'm told, recently, at least based on public reporting, or at least it's on its way. But there are other systems that are more powerful, the S-300 in particular, that we have not sent. And we have that because we had acquired it at one point to be able to test it against our planes and so on. We should send that. We should do everything we can do to facilitate these other countries that have these Warsaw Pact era, Soviet systems into Ukraine, because that's what they desperately need, Chuck. And that's what the president's been asking for. We should also send the MiG-29s to raise that issue again. It's been a few weeks now since the Secretary of State gave that a green light, and somehow that hasn't happened. And the Ukrainians insist that they need it, they want it, it would be helpful. I think we need to trust them on that.
You heard the ambassador. Does phosphorus, the use of some phosphorus bombs to you, cross that line on the use of chemical weapons to change NATO's calculus or not?
Well, if we can verify it, I think it is. I think the use of chemical weapons against innocent civilians is something where we have to draw a red line, and we need to do it now, and we need to do it with our NATO allies. Recall we did this in Syria and did not honor the red line. This time we got to be darn sure that what we're doing is something that will be backed up by us, by our NATO allies. And I do think that's a red line. I think chemical and biological weapons must be.
Do you believe the response, I hear the words proportionate. Define what proportionate in your mind would be.
Well, the president said that we would respond in kind, and later that was walked back because it sounded like he was saying, of course, we would respond with chemical weapons, which would not be appropriate. Right. We've actually signed a treaty saying we would never do that, as has Russia, by the way. So our response should be militarily. And I don't think we need to spell it out exactly, but there are a number of military responses that I could see. One would be to establish a humanitarian air defense zone in parts of western Ukraine. And that could be done from outside of the borders of Ukraine. That's an example, where in Lviv, where you have thousands of people who are there with the international relief organizations, lots of reporters, including from NBC, lots of refugees coming through, hundreds of thousands there. Yesterday, there was a bombing of Lviv within a couple miles of the train station where there's so many refugees and so many of these Westerners. So we could, through some means, since we have Patriot missiles in Poland, in Romania, in Slovakia, protect some of that territory. That's an example of something that could be done militarily that would not be offensive, strictly defensive, no boots on the ground, but would enable us to say use of chemical weapons or biological weapons has consequences, and we're going to do something about it.
Let me turn to some domestic issues here. The Supreme Court Have you made a decision on whether you're going to support Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's elevation to the Supreme Court?
Well, I said all along I'm going to wait till the Judiciary Committee is done with its action. I think they're going to vote a week from Monday. They've still asked for additional documents, the Republicans on the committee, so I want to give her that ability. But as you know, Chuck, less than a year ago I voted against her for the Court of Appeals, and I did so because I'm concerned about her judicial philosophy. In particular, for me, on the regulatory front, she had a case at the district court level where essentially she legislated from the bench and had to do with country of origin labeling for meat products, and she did what many of us think is wrong, which is say that the statute says one thing, but we're going to, as judges, decide what's best. And so that's my biggest concern. I talked to her about it. I've also talked to her about the court packing issue, which does concern me. Her mentor, Justice Breyer, as well as Justice Ginsburg, both came out against packing the court because of the interest in defending the institution of the court, and yet she refuses to do that. And I don't understand that because it's not an issue that will come before her in the court, so she should, as a nominee, be able to talk about it, and I'm concerned that she's not been willing to do that.
I'm curious, I want to play a clip of some of the questioning she received from some of your Republican colleagues on the committee hearing. Here's the clip.
You say this does not signal a heinous or egregious child pornography offense. Help me understand that.
Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
The ordinary crime was not committed by computer. So the
Would you now agree with me that computers are sort of the venue of choice for child pornographer people?
Senator Mitt Romney thought some of the tone of the questioning and the topics were sort of off key there. I'm curious what you thought.
Well, her record is fair game, Chuck, and this is not attacking her personally. By the way, I found her bright and personable when I met with her. She's obviously an historic choice for the court. But I don't think it's wrong to go after her record. I mean, that's what we should be doing in these hearings. With Justice Kavanaugh, as you know, it became personal attacks. By the way, uncorroborated attacks. It was not about his record, largely. This is about her record, and it's about her sentencing. It's not probably what I'm going to base my decision on, because I think there are a lot of judges that have very lenient sentencing these days. I do think at a time of rising crime, particularly in our major cities, that's an issue. And she was below the recommendations based on the federal sentencing guidelines, and also below, in some cases, what the probation officers recommended. So I think it's fair to ask about that. I think it should be done in a respectful way. And again, I'm glad that these were not personal attacks on her, which we have seen in previous
Senator, I'm curious,
nominations, including Judge Kavanaugh.
I'm curious if you believe Justice Thomas, these text messages that have come out from Ginny Thomas to the former White House Chief of Staff, saying some bizarre conspiratorial things. It's not against the law to believe in conspiratorial things. But I'm curious, given the precedent that Loretta Lynch, as Attorney General, when she recused herself after a tarmac meeting with former President Clinton, when the Justice Department was looking into something involving Hillary Clinton, is that a precedent Justice Thomas should follow and recuse himself on January 6 cases?
Well, I would respect his opinion on that. I don't know that he'll have the specific issue come before him about those records. That might be one where he would consider that. But look, he's a jurist who has a lot of integrity, and I think he will make that decision. I don't think that what your spouse says should recuse you from whether it's in the legislative branch or in the judicial branch. That would be a new precedent. But I do think that if a case comes before him that's exactly on point, again, as to probably records and whether they should be made available, that might be an issue where he would think about it. But look, he's going to make that decision, and he has the right to do it.
Senator Rob Portman, Republican from Ohio, I always appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
You got it.